I recently had a couple of evangelical clergy, Protestant ministers, visit the monastery for a few days. And one of them asked me what it was like to grow up Russian Orthodox in America. And I explained that actually I'm a convert. And I said, in fact, all six of the members of this community are converts. So none of us has Russian background. We're not Greek, we're not Russian, we're not Serbian, we're not Bulgarian, we're not any of the traditional ethnic groups that were Orthodox. We are all converts. We all found our way into Orthodoxy in a different way from one another. In longevity, I'm the oldest, not only as a senior monk here, and the oldest of them all, but I became Orthodox before any of them. I was originally raised a Protestant, evangelical Lutheran. And by the time I was ending my sophomore year in college, I had decided that I was not interested in being Lutheran. And so I walked away. And eventually I found myself totally secularized. In the late 60s, I transferred from Concordia in Portland to Mount Angel College in Mount Angel, Oregon, which was a former Roman Catholic college that was now secular in nature. And that is where I graduated in 1970. During my sojourn at Mount Angel College, I followed the culture that was prevalent at the time, and I became a hippie. I grew my hair long, I dressed in weird clothes, I wore beads around my neck, I grew a long beard. And I remember when I went home for Christmas, my mother was so upset to see me, and she said, "Well, you know, we still have some of your old sport coats in the closet, and we have our Christmas Eve candlelight service at the Lutheran Church, and I would really love to have you come with us, but could I pay for you getting a haircut and your beard trimmed off?" And I said, "Mom, if I'm not welcome in the Lutheran Church as I am, I'm not going." And so I didn't go. She didn't think that people there would be very happy to see a hippie walk in. So I didn't. So my sojourn began in those years with the counterculture movement of the hippies. Although I was part of the group that saw myself as a flower child, I bathed on a daily basis, and I dressed in good, clean clothes, and I ate normal foods. And then one day, I found myself in graduate school and eventually became a therapist. And increasingly, I was not happy. I was not happy with my life. I wasn't happy with the people that I was working with, my colleagues. I didn't feel like they were in it for the right reasons. I wanted to help people, and it seemed like they were in it for prestige or money, and that was not for me. And after many years of doing that, I took a sabbatical, and I loaded up my Volkswagen bus that I had bought with camping equipment, and I went on the road for 8 months. And towards the end of the beginning of the 7th month, I drove into San Francisco from Big Sur, where I had been staying. And I went to Cliff House, which was my favorite restaurant in graduate school. And I had dinner there. And as I was driving up Gary Boulevard, I saw looming off to my left the seven-story high Holy Virgin Joy of All Who Sorrow Russian Orthodox Cathedral. I'd gone in there once as a college student just to kind of look at it, and I was totally blown away by it. So this time, I parked my car, and this atheist walked across the street and went into the cathedral, and I saw a man behind the candle stand, and I asked him if I could. I said, when are your services tomorrow? And he said, well, we have a hierarchical liturgy at such and such a time tomorrow. You're welcome. So the next day, I drove in from Berkeley, where I was visiting some friends, and I attended my very first Orthodox liturgy. To say I was surprised would be an understatement. It reminded me of the time as a 10-year-old when I asked our Lutheran pastor, why is it that the God of the Old Testament cared so much about how he was worshipped that he, the architect of the cosmos, designed the temple in Jerusalem and all the vestments that were to be worn by the priests? And I said, why would he care so much about how he was worshipped then, but he doesn't care now? And my evangelical Lutheran pastor said to this 10-year-old, well, they were under the old covenant. We're under the new covenant. And I remember thinking, this is kind of a lame answer, but I had too much respect for the pastor to question his words, so I didn't. I just carried on as best I could as a 10-year-old. But standing in Holy Virgin Cathedral and watching the royal doors open, I saw the Holy of Holies. And seeing the beautiful vestments of the bishops and the clergy, I beheld something that I was actually startled to see. God does still care about how he's worshipped. And here it is. And I felt like I had experienced Christianity for the very first time, and in many ways I had. So when I left the service, I encountered a couple of monks and got into a conversation with them, which led to many more conversations. Well, you know the end result. I eventually became Orthodox, and I became a monk. I remember the very first time, after 3 years as a novice and finally being tonsured a monk, that I went to visit my parents in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I remember my mother was rather appalled at my appearance. She even made a remark about how it looks like you've come back to being a hippie because you've grown your hair long again, you've grown a beard, you're dressing funny, and you have things around your neck. She also did another peculiar thing. She says, I told your dad to park on the street so you can drive up into the garage where there's easy access to the kitchen, so you won't have to walk from the street anymore. And I knew darn well it was not about my comfort. It was not wanting the neighbors to see what her son looked like, wondering who is that weird man in those robes and the long beard and hair going into their home. One of the beautiful things about Orthodoxy is that ultimately I realized that my years as a flower child, as a counterculture flower child, were ultimately to lead me to the ancient counterculture, which is monasticism. And here I am. I've been a monk for over 40 years, and I have never been happier. The services in the Orthodox Church are beautiful. I remember once having a man at the cathedral in San Francisco tell me that there was a Jewish rabbi who once a year would bring his young people into the cathedral to show them what the temple was like. A lot of people don't realize that early synagogues, the most ancient ones that have been discovered in the Holy Land, actually had frescoes on the walls. They weren't plain. They were not devoid of images. They had frescoes. And then when Christianity came and Orthodoxy started, the Orthodox started painting frescoes on their walls and bringing in icons. The Jewish people decided, oh, we don't want to do that anymore. It's too much like them, and so let's cut those out, and they did. So here's a rabbi coming into the cathedral in San Francisco with his confirmation class and saying, get rid of the frescoes and the icons, and you have the temple in Jerusalem. What a glorious thing that I had discovered. What a glorious thing. I look at our young people today, and remember, I think I've spoken about this before, that during the 70s and 80s, I was a radical left-wing member of the Socialist Workers' Party. I was very anti-Christian, for sure. And now I am witnessing a replay in our society where we are not only no longer a Christian majority country, but Christians worldwide are being persecuted like never before. And even in the West, and even in the United States, conservative Christians are being demonized by the powers that be. If we're not pro-transgender, if we're not pro-gay marriage, then somehow we are bigots. And some have even gone so far as to say that we are white supremacists and racist. I have a close relationship with the Ethiopian community in Seattle. Abuna Marcos, the Archbishop, is a close friend of mine and has been for years. And when I was in prison ministry about 19 years ago, I met a young man who was Ethiopian, and he was in prison for 7 years. And of the 8 years, I served as a prison chaplain once a month for a day journey there to Monroe, Washington. I realized that this young man shared with me that he had never known his father, that his birth father had died when he was an infant. And he said, in Ethiopia, we have a tradition. The tradition is, if I say, you are my son, and he says, you are my father, it is considered a legal adoption. So I asked him, do you want me to be your father? And he said, yes. And I said, you are my son. And he said, you are my father. That is the moment when I became the whitest Ethiopian on the planet. I am so white, in fact, that when I'm in downtown Seattle on a summer day and people see me coming, they put on their sunglasses. What I'm wanting to share with all of you is that I have gone the gamut. I was every parent's worst fear. Oh my gosh, my child is going to become a hippie. My child is going to leave Republican conservatism and become a socialist and a member of the Socialist Workers' Party and a leftist. So I look at the young people today and the behavior of so many of them in the riots in places like Portland, Oregon, which I at one time led as a member of the party. And I look at that time and I think, oh my gosh, I can't believe it was me then. So I look at these young people today and I see myself. And I know that they are deserving of my love and my respect. And I know that if there was hope for me, there's hope for them. And this is why I reach out with my YouTube videos and my podcasts, because I want to reach the young generation who are stuck in nihilism, where I had been stuck. There is no hope, they say. And the only hope is to change society by revolution. But the true revolution is one that takes place in the heart when we submit to the Lord who created us and sent his only begotten Son, the second person of the Holy Trinity, the Logos by whom everything in the cosmos was created. He sent his Son into the world to join his divinity with our humanity. And by his death and holy resurrection, has adopted us as his children. He has made us his own. So in all of my weakness and my fallen nature, I am a child of God. And I have a past. And I look at the young people today who are essentially living my past. And I look at them with great love and affection, with the desire in my heart to give witness to the truth of Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and the truth that the Orthodox Church is the very church which Christ founded. Glory to God for all things.